So let me tell you something that I see all the time when I sit down with someone who wants to fix their budget. And when I say all the time, I mean from women who are smart and capable. They're handling life, they're handling everybody else's stuff, they're juggling multiple things, and yet they are still confused about why their money never seems to line up. And this is usually the moment where people say, I don't understand. I make good money. I don't live check to check. I'm not irresponsible. And I'm going to tell you something. I believe you. But then we dive into those transactions, and what we thought was happening and what actually happened are two very different stories. So let's talk through the eight most common mistakes I see when people try to budget. And these are mistakes that I see every single week when I'm auditing bank statements. The first and biggest mistake people make when creating a budget, and listen, if you don't fix this one, nothing else is going to work, so don't even try it. Mistake number one, we budget for who we hope we are instead of who we actually are. Now, listen, before you click off of this video and before you shut down, this is not about discipline. This is about getting honest. Most people don't budget their money, they budget their identity. We budget like the woman who cooks every night, even though we've been ordering DoorDash since Tuesday. We budget like the woman who doesn't really shop like that, even though packages are being delivered multiple times through the week. We budget like, once things calm down. But listen, can we be honest for a second? Things have not been calm since 2019. So I always hear, or I'll often hear people say when they describe their spending habits, they're like, oh, I'm not a spender. And I'm like, okay, but that bank statement is saying that you're consistent with spending. And here's the deal, I truly believe that they don't believe that, right? And that's because we don't always see spending as spending. We see spending as taking care of things, right? Groceries are for everybody. I'm helping family, or I am needing to look presentable for work, especially if I got to go back into the office now, or convenience because you're tired. And the one that I see more than anything is people ordering online because you don't have the energy or the time to plan. None of it feels reckless, but it still costs. Here's another one. Someone will have a really good month, right? There are no birthdays, no celebrations, there are no emergencies, no extra ask, right? And then they'll say, hey, this is my budget. But the reality is that wasn't your life, that was a pause. And when the chaos comes back, because it always does, that budget is going to fall apart quick. And then you'll blame yourself and say that budgeting doesn't work. When the reality is, your budget wasn't literally built for your life, it was built on an exception. So let's get real and talk about what this could look like when we actually open up our bank statements. So when I audit statements, I'm not looking for judgment, I'm looking for patterns. And here's what shows up almost every time: grocery budgets that don't necessarily include the other aisles in Target that you shop at, not just the Target, not just the grocery aisles, or the miscellaneous items that eats up $600 a month. Small purchases that repeat so often that they don't feel big until they are. And this is the part right here when people say, I didn't realize I was spending that much. And I believe you. See, we are often taught to watch for big purchases, not the frequent ones. So spending $200 at one time on something could feel irresponsible. But $12 here, $18 here, $23 there, it feels harmless. And that is how your money leaves so quickly but quietly. So what do? I just want you to go look. I want you to pull the last 30 days of your bank statements. Highlight everything that is not a bill. Don't categorize, don't justify, don't say, you know what, next month we're going to do different. I just want you to look. And this is what I will call your reality line. Now, instead of you saying, how much did I spend? I want you to ask, how often did I spend? Because frequency will tell the truth faster than your totals. Now, hear me and hear me clearly when I say, don't say to yourself when you're reviewing these totals, when you're reviewing these transactions, that you're bad with money. Instead, and write this down, I want you to say, my budget does not match my behavior yet, and underline yet, because I don't want you to shame yourself into a system that you won't maintain. I want you to get the information so that we can fix your spending triggers once and for all. Now, here's where the big shift is going to take place. Evidence always comes before identity. So you don't get to budget for the woman you're becoming until you understand the woman that you are today. And no, this doesn't mean that you're stuck in the cycle until whenever. It means that now you finally have the data you need in order to change. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is where most people stop. Not because they don't care, but because the truth without knowing what to do next feels heavy. And this is where or why I feel like our programs are so impactful. It's not because we all tell you what to do, but because we help you to interpret what you're seeing and to decide what actually needs to change. And we help keep you aligned when your emotions start talking a little bit louder than your logic. That's the work that we do. Now, if you find that this is helpful, I want you to challenge to stop guessing. And if you planned and what you live doesn't necessarily match, don't fix it, not just yet. Just tell the truth. You see, here's a pattern that I see over and over. Once people stop finally guessing and they finally see their real spending, then they'll say, well, okay, at least my bills are paid and I see that I have a spending problem. But I guess the question really is, if paying your bills is enough, why does it still feel like your money disappears every month? And that's going to bring us to mistake number two, treating fixed bills like they are the budget. Think about your fixed bills, rent or your mortgage, lights, phone insurance, car note. They're all paid, right? And yet you still feel tight, still feel anxious, still one inconvenience away from stress. And that's because bills are not a budget, they're just obligations. Now, listen, I understand firsthand why we do this. Bills feel grown, they feel responsible, especially if you grew up watching money be unstable in a household where you were living check to check or utilities are being cut off every other month. Paying your bills and paying your bills on time feels like winning. And maybe you were like me and you were raised to believe that, listen, if the lights are on and the rent is paid, you're doing okay. But let's be honest, that belief is outdated because today, most financial stress doesn't come from bills, it comes from everything in between. This is actually one of the most common things that I hear from clients. All my bills are paid. I just don't know where the rest of it goes. And when you say it out loud, it sounds responsible. But what it really means is the most flexible part of your money doesn't have a plan. Now, this is how this usually shows up. Your bills get paid around the first of the month, right? The first week feels fine. Second week starts to feel a little tight. By the third week, you're rearranging things. And by the fourth week, you're questioning yourself, not because you overspent on bills, but because the rest of your money never had any direction. Now, listen, I'm gonna just tell the truth and shame the devil. Groceries and gas are the biggest culprits here, right? That's how it shows up in your budget. And it's because we don't typically plan them because they change. But here's the truth, right? And if we get down to the root, what actually changes is not necessarily your grocery bill or your gas that you use, but what changes is how tired you are, how busy the week gets, how many people need something from you. That's what changes. And when you don't plan for that, convenience wins every time. Unplanned spending will always expand, always. And it's not because you're irresponsible, but because your money needs boundaries. So here's the fix, and this is something that you can actually do immediately. Your money needs three buckets. Okay, so write this down: fixed, flexible, and future. Again, your money needs three buckets: fixed, flexible, and future. Fixed is what you owe. Flexible is where your choices live. And then future will be anything that you want to save, put towards debt, put towards any future financial goal. Now, listen, if your budget right now only has one bucket, and that's bills or and then everything that's left over, it's incomplete. And that is why it doesn't work. Now, I know I told you about a flexible category or a flexible bucket, but flexible doesn't mean random spending. It also needs limits. And I'm going to be honest, in the very beginning, for the first 6 months of you putting this into practice, it needs weekly limits, right? And it's necessary that you give yourself some limits because without them, flexible money turns into invisible money. Now, before you swipe your card or have Google to fill in your card number for you, I want you to ask yourself a question. Is this still within the plan? Oftentimes we'll ask ourselves before we spend, can I afford it? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to say yes because you probably can. And if not, you will justify a purchase that you really want. I know, I've done it too. The question should be not just, is this still within the plan, but does it belong? So, if bills are obligations, right? I want you to start thinking of spending as the place where your strategy now lives. Because if you don't start planning what happens between, that space between bills, your money will make decisions without you. Now, if this is helpful, I want to challenge you to stop calling your bills a budget. Tonight, separate your money into fixed, flexible, and future. And if flexible spending doesn't have limits, that's not discipline, it's guesswork. Now, if something just clicked for you and this just blessed you, I want you to type fixed in the comments, okay? Listen, budgets they don't fail because, the bills are too high or the bills are too much. No, your budget is failing because of the space between the bills is unmanaged. Now, this part right here, this is where I see people freeze. Because once you realize that your bills aren't really your budget and the space between them is unmanaged, then the question becomes like, okay, cool. Now that I know that, what do I do next? And that's exactly why we created the 90-day budget alignment sprint. It's not a class, it's not a workshop, and it's not a theory, right? And it's definitely not going to be okay, I just need to try harder and cut this out type of a conversation. It's a short, focused season where we partner with you to talk about your real numbers, look at your real spending and your real obligations, and turn them into a plan that actually fits your life. In 90 days, people walk away with clarity, structure, and confidence like they've never had before. Not because they learned more, but because they finally applied what mattered. And now, once people realize that their bills aren't their budget, the next question we always get is, all right, cool, I'll just save what's left. But if that actually worked, wouldn't most people already have a savings? So, mistake number 3 is using whatever is left over in your checking account as your saving strategy. Because here's the truth, if savings only happens after life happens, it will almost never happen. And again, it's not because you don't care about saving for your future, but because spending expands to whatever you allow. I, like most of us, was never taught to treat saving like a priority. Savings has always just felt optional or was treated like a reward, like something that I would do when I had time, when things were calm, and I could be intentional with creating a saving strategy. But can I be honest? I can't tell you or even remember the last time I had a calm month. And so, if I'm not intentional, I would never have a savings account. Now, most people don't move money into an actual savings account because they need a cushion. Clients will tell me, listen, I keep my money in my checking account just in case. But with no plan for the money that's left, what tends to happen is we spend it. And then now we're transferring money back into our checking account from our savings, right? And guess what? That cushion, it disappears. Now, I know here's the part where people start to feel a little convicted and they're like, you know what? I am going to do better. You make this pledge that you're going to start saving next month. Here, can I help you for a second? I want to actually help you get out of that I'll start next month loop. Can I do that for you? Good. So let's say someone says, you know what? I'll start next month, or once I catch up, then I'll start saving. But here's the deal, catching up never ends, right? There's always going to be something. There's going to be birthdays or school stuff or car things or holidays or fees that you just forgot about. So savings keeps getting pushed further and further to later, and later becomes never. So then people say, what about emergencies? You know what? You're right. Let's talk about emergencies, right? Because emergencies are real things that we should plan for, and they do happen, and they can impact your budget. So here's the part that nobody wants to talk about when we start talking about emergencies. A lot of what we call emergencies weren't emergencies, they weren't predictable. And if we're honest with ourselves, right? We can be honest. Car maintenance, holidays, back to school, medical copays. If we're honest, we just didn't do a great job of planning for those expenses, right? And when we don't plan for predictable expenses, they always feel like sabotage. Now, I'm going to say something that's true, okay? I want you to hear me. Savings isn't about how much you have. It's about when you move it. Let me say this a different way. The amount doesn't matter right now. The order does. So, how do you start? Here's the first thing that I want you to do. I want you to pay your savings first, even if it's a small amount. Before your next paycheck, I want you to set a savings transfer that happens 24 hours after your payday. It could be $25, it could be $50. It just needs to be something. The amount doesn't matter. And if you've already gotten paid and you're watching this now, I want you to move $25 into a savings account today. Because the longer your money sits in your checking account, the longer it has to start making plans without you. Step two, I want you to separate your savings from your spending. Why? Because savings that sit next to spending will eventually become spending. So move it, rename it, make it really hard for you to access. Not because you lack discipline, although you might lack discipline, but because you're human. And if it's available and there's no plan and there's no intention and there's no vision for it, you will spend it. Now, step three, I want you to start with one goal. I know that right now you're feeling all encouraged and inspired, and then it's like, I want to save for this and I want to save for this. Listen, okay? Let's just start with one small emergency buffer, not a $10,000 goal, but maybe a $500 goal or $250 goal, whatever feels comfortable for you, just enough to stop the panic. Think of it this way: your savings is a bill that you owe your future. And if you treat it like it's extra, it will always be optional. The consistency of contributing to a savings account will build security, not big dramatic moves and deposits. Okay. You need to build a habit of contributing to your future. Now, most of us know, and if we're honest and we can admit this, that we should be saving, right? But this idea that your savings needs to be this impressive amount, let that go. It doesn't. It just needs to be consistent. And guess what happens? If you contribute to your savings account consistently over time, it will be this impressive amount, right? But today, start with what you have and just start developing that habit. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what? I've tried this. I've tried paying myself first. I've tried setting up a savings, and somehow it all still falls apart. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing it wrong. What this typically tells me is your issue isn't just saving, it's everything around it. It's your habits, it's your priorities, it's your patterns. It could even be your confidence with making money decisions. Now, here's something I'm going to tell you that you may not know. When someone starts trying to save first, something interesting happens. They start to realize almost immediately that money is still a little tight. So the real question becomes, am I short on money, or am I misunderstanding what my income can really support? And that will take us to mistake number four. Mistake number four is confusing income with capacity. Listen, just because money comes in doesn't mean it's available. Your income will tell you what you earn. Capacity will tell you what your life can actually support. And those two numbers are rarely the same. Why is this so common? Because maybe we were taught that more money equals more freedom. So when you get a raise or a bonus or a new client, or when your side hustle starts popping, your first thought is, whew, I can finally breathe. But here's the deal: breathing doesn't happen if that money is already spoken for. I remember I got a raise and I swore that this was the season that things changed for me finally. But then 3 months later, that same stress started to pop up. I had that same tight checking account. And then there was that same old familiar feeling of, where is my money going? And not because I was mismanaging it, right? But it was because this raise that I received increased my expectations, but not necessarily my capacity. Listen, this is also why you will see people who make really good money and they still feel or talk like they're stuck. And that's because everything is committed. Everything has an assignment. And even one unexpected expense will throw everything off. That's not a money problem. That's a capacity problem. Now, I mentioned side hustle money before, and that's money that you're making outside of your normal 9 to 5. And so maybe that you're someone with some side hustle money, and that money feels good to us because, we'll say, yo, this is extra. But that extra money that does not get assigned a job or a vision or some intention, it'll find one. And typically, we'll use that extra money on lifestyle choices or subscriptions or convenience, right? DoorDash instead of cooking, right? Or even just little upgrades that don't feel dangerous, right? Because it's side hustle money until that pressure starts showing up again, right? The truth is, contrary to popular belief, more money doesn't automatically create more options. Clarity does that. And spending beyond your capacity is what creates that financial anxiety, not necessarily the lack of income. So, here is an immediate fix in three simple yet empowering steps. And you're going to want to write this down. Are you ready? Step one, I want you to calculate your true capacity. So, to do that, you're going to take your take home pay and subtract your fixed bills. Now, subtract your minimum debt payments, then subtract your required savings. It doesn't matter, even if it's $25. I want you to calculate it in here. What's left is your real capacity, not what you feel like you should have, but what you actually have left over. Step two, I want you to assign capacity before you spend it. What do I mean by that? Before the month starts, I want you to decide what part of the capacity supports your real life and what part supports progress. Anything that's unassigned, any money that's unassigned will always disappear. Step three, I want you to treat increases strategically. Anytime you get a raise, a bonus, refund, side income, unexpected birthday money, right? Any increase to your normal income, you want to be strategic about it. Decide where it goes before it hits your account. Now, this is different than spending your regular money, your bill money before it hits, right? This is different than that. This is an intentionality. This is some strategic leadership and stewardship over your money. Even splitting it will give you control. Progress and enjoyment can absolutely coexist, but you have to be intentional about it. Your income is the starting line. Capacity becomes the boundary. That's what holds everything in place. And those boundaries are what protect your peace, not your income. You see that? You see the difference? This is also where people start to lose their footing. They'll start to make more money, but then they don't feel more stable because no one has actually ever helped them to define what their money can actually support. Now, once people understand their true capacity, listen, that's where the breakthroughs start happening. And then they'll start to make this assumption, and it's wrong, but they'll make this assumption that the rest is just discipline. They'll think, okay, now I just need to make better choices. But if discipline were enough, why do the same spending slip ups keep showing up over time, even when the numbers start to finally make sense? We'll talk about that in mistake number 5.